This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
All revved up and everywhere to go but up. Auto sales take off in October with the economy growing so tepidly. Why is the industry on track for its best year ever?
Cutting cash. The Federal Reserve temporarily stopped billions of dollars of U.S. money from going to Iraq's central bank. And the reasons might surprise you.
Tough medicine, and we'll introduce you to a publicly traded company under investigation in at least 6 states and shrouded in controversy. All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, November 3rd.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Talk about motoring along. America's auto industry is now on pace to have its best year ever after much better than expected October sales. For the month, the annualized sales rate was nearly 18.25 million. That's the second straight month above 18 million, and the only other time that has happened was 15 years ago. Phil LeBeau has more on the red-hot sales and why the factors driving it aren't slowing down.
Americans are buying new cars and trucks at a pace we haven't seen since early 2000, with almost every automaker posting better than expected sales. Driving the busy October, a powerful combination of low gas prices making trucks and SUVs more attractive and low financing rates making monthly payments more affordable. Throw in relatively strong consumer confidence and you see why many Americans decided to buy a new vehicle last month.
Cars are affordable, the employment figures support it, and the industry is building the best and safest cars with the most innovative technology. So we're very excited and we're very bullish.
The exceptionally strong sales mean auto assembly plants will continue building and shipping vehicles at a near record pace. The one exception, Volkswagen. In October, the first full month since the diesel emission scandal erupted, sales were up just 0.24%. The fractional gain comes as scores of diesel models are parked on dealer lots because they can't be sold. To bring in customers, VW boosted incentives by almost 30%, according to one research firm. Despite the strong demand and near-record sales, some automakers are offering even greater incentives as they head into the end of the year.
Ford is now offering even greater discounts on virtually every model in its lineup as it hopes to win back a greater share of the U.S. market. If those incentives are a hit, look for other automakers to match what Ford is doing in November and December. Phil LeBeau, Nightly Business Report, Chicago.
So will auto sales continue to thrive in an economy that is growing in fits and starts? Let's ask Rebecca Lindland. She's senior analyst at Kelley Blue Book, one of my favorite websites, by the way, Rebecca, because I'm a car junkie, I got to tell you. So the basic question is, why are auto sales so strong if the economy is so tepid?
Well, Tyler, first, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be on with you guys again.
Nice to have you.
Thanks. So I think that it's a combination of things. You know, people have been really on the sidelines. The average vehicle age is still well over 11 years. So there's a lot of old cars out there. The other thing that's helped a lot is financing. Before, in 2000, all of those sales were really financed through home equity loans. People were pulling out equity in their home. Instead, what we're doing is actually extending the term of a loan now. So it used to be a 48 or 60-month loan. Now we're looking at 72 and even 84-month loans.
Wow.
And with 0% financing, those are some really, really cheap payments we've got going on.
But longer term for the automakers, that may take a toll, right? Because if you have a 72-month loan, you're not going to be in the market for a new car for a while.
Well, exactly, Sue. And we actually have seen that again in the past, where people don't have equity in their vehicle. They go to trade it in, but they owe more on it. And so sometimes they'll refinance the excess that they owe. So we could really get ourselves into some trouble here. We need to learn from lessons in the past and not repeat any of the history. We need to finance wisely. We aren't seeing a lot of substandard financing, but we still need to be smart about this.
Well, that's interesting. Last night, Rebecca, we had on our Diana Olick, who was saying that right now, only people with really pristine credit are able to get mortgages. Is that comparable to what's going on in the auto market, or can more people get automobile financing than, say, house financing?
Well, having just gone through my own refinancing, I can tell you, and I have really good credit, it was painful. So financing a vehicle is completely different. You know, the standards are very different. And also it's easier to repossess a car than it is a house. So we are, you know, again, we just have to be disciplined in our financing, and people need to be disciplined in their financing as well. If you take on a car payment, you're looking at, you know, anywhere from probably a minimum of $400 a month. And suddenly, every month that comes about. So people need to be responsible as well with their financing.
So does this 18 million unit figure, does that continue, or is this an anomaly? I know it's two straight months that we've seen that, but does this kind of strength continue given the financing background and backdrop and all of the incentives that are out there?
Well, I think with Ford, as Phil referenced in his piece, with Ford offering these employee discounts, we could really see a run-up in November sales. But again, we've learned from the past, when the finance companies did that back in 2001, no, I'm sorry, I think it was 2005, we saw that actually then sales dropped way off. So we have to be careful that we're not artificially inflating these sales.
Right.
You know, and so we have to, again, just, it's in moderation.
All right, Rebecca, hope you got a good rate on your refi. Rebecca Lindland with Kelley Blue Book.
Thanks.
Sticking with the auto sector, more trouble for Volkswagen. The German automaker disclosing that internal emissions testing has found irregularities in about 800,000 cars. That would add an estimated $2.2 billion to the amount of money this ongoing scandal will cost the firm. In a statement, the company said most of the issues were found in diesel vehicles, which could also mean that gas-powered cars have been impacted as well.
The airbag maker Takata is set to face a $70 million fine. The settlement with U.S. regulators relates to the company's handling of its airbag recall. The defective parts have killed at least 8 people and injured close to 100, according to reports. The Japanese supplier could also face an additional fine of $130 million.
Those strong auto sales combined with a rise in the energy sector led to a positive day on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 89 points to 17,918. The Nasdaq climbed 18 and the S&P 500 was up nearly 6. On the economic front, orders for factory goods fell for the second straight month in September, down 1%, but that obviously didn't slow stocks today.
And Sue, Activision Blizzard agreeing to buy King Digital for nearly $6 billion. King makes the popular Candy Crush video game. Wall Street seemed to think the deal was a sweet one, sending Activision up nearly 4%, King Digital up more than 14%, almost 15%. Julia Borston takes a look at what drove the deal.
Video game giant Activision Blizzard is known for its stronghold in console games, with huge hits including Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, and its newest franchise, Destiny. Buying Candy Crush maker King diversifies the console game leader in a whole new direction, giving it access to the mobile gaming market, expected to generate more than $36 billion in revenue this year, on track to grow more than 50% in the next 4 years.
Mobile was important, but also attracting women to gaming is a really important part of our strategy. And with King, 60% of the audience is now female, which is a really great expansion opportunity for us. And they're in 196 countries around the world, which is something that's really exciting.
The combined company will have about 500 million monthly active users around the world. The idea is that Activision will benefit from King's player network and King from Activision's expertise in hardcore games.
I think King will work with Activision going forward to potentially take some of Activision's franchises and drive them into the mobile market. And potentially Activision will help King kind of move into the more mid-core, hardcore titles versus the casual games that they've been known for in the past.
Analysts are bullish on the fact that the deal will add significantly to Activision's top and bottom line in 2016, and that's without accounting for synergies. Though some have raised questions about the risks of King's reliance on its core franchise, Candy Crush, and the potential for it to lose its value over time. But analyst Mike Olson points to the potential for Activision to make the most out of that game and its revenue.
We look at the opportunity to sustain some of that $700 million in operating profit. And I think there's going to be some cost cuts that happen within the King business, maybe a little bit less investment on new initiatives, new games, and a focus on just kind of milking the cash flow out of that Candy Crush franchise.
Activision also reported quarterly revenue that beat expectations, though guidance for the fourth quarter came in a bit lighter than projected. Speculation about more consolidation in the gaming space sent casual game makers Zynga and Glu Mobile higher in intraday trading Tuesday. King shareholders still have to vote on the deal, which is expected to close next spring. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Julia Borston in Los Angeles.
We told you last night about AIG's disappointing third quarter results. As a result, the stock was down more than 4% today. And selling pressure isn't the only kind AIG faces. Activist investor Carl Icahn wants to break up the company to unleash value. Management thinks it's got a better idea. It announced cost cuts totaling hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Mary Thompson has more.
The insurer AIG trying to assure investors it's on the right track.
We'll be eliminating 23% of the top 1,400 leaders of the company as we narrow our strategic focus on the areas that we can win.
CEO Peter Hancock saying the layoffs and other restructuring moves will save the firm $500 to $600 million a year and create a leaner, more efficient operation. Hancock also dismissing activist investor Carl Icahn's call to split AIG's core businesses into separate firms. A move Icahn sees getting AIG out from under the Federal Reserve's oversight and freeing up more capital to return to shareholders. It's a plan Hancock maintains won't work.
We are not averse to simplifying the company, but certainly that split between property and casualty and life would not release any additional capital.
Once awarded the federal government, AIG's returned $26 billion to shareholders, having transformed itself under its former CEO, the late Bob Ben-Moshe. He sold billions of dollars in assets aimed at repaying taxpayers and aimed at getting the company on firmer footing. 2 years on the job, Hancock's strategy is to improve underwriting standards and modernize the firm's tech infrastructure to cut costs and improve profitability. On that front, the firm failed in the third quarter, reporting disappointing operating results that it blamed on declines in its investment portfolio and a variety of charges. Though analyst Randy Biner points out the firm's core insurance operations also failed to deliver.
Quarters like this show that the quality of the business at AIG, its reserves in particular, are weak.
The weakness in AIG's core life and property and casualty businesses, putting added pressure on the company at a time investor pressure is trying to force change at a firm that's undergone lots of it over the last decade. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Mary Thompson.
Coming up, why billions of dollars from the U.S. Federal Reserve stopped flowing to Iraq.
Oh, those millennials, they're the fussy and entitled generation, right? Wrong, at least according to the new CNBC All-American Survey. When it comes to those ages 18 to 34 and their place in the economy, it seems they're not so different after all. Steve Leisman has the results.
Conventional wisdom holds that the millennial generation, influenced by the 9/11 attacks, burdened with student debt, and reared in a world of high-speed mobile devices, is a unique group of young people. But a special CNBC All-America Economic Survey focusing on millennials, a group aged 18 to 34 years old, finds them to be more similar to the rest of the population than they are different. Like when it comes to investments. Just a third think this is a good time to invest in stocks. That's about the same as the overall population. 46% of millennials and all adults say it's a bad time to invest. One difference, fewer millennials say it's a very bad time to invest. As a group, they're somewhat more risk-averse than the rest of the population. For example, 21% say savings account and cash are their top investment choice. That compares with just 14% for all adults. That could be a mistake.
The real thing that is different about this generation is this skepticism towards stocks. So this preference for cash as kind of the key instrument when you're really young is totally backwards. And I understand why it's the case because of the financial crisis, but that's the thing that we should try to change for young people more than anything else, because they have this great opportunity. Even if they're vesting a small amount, it should not be in cash.
And looking at the importance of 6 traits in a potential employer like ethics, environmental practices, work-life balance, and diversity, millennial preferences are just about the same as the broader population. Millennials are different in some key areas at work. They're more likely to be concerned about opportunities to advance in their careers and about flexible work hours. They also care less about an employer's retirement benefits, which you'd expect from young people. But millennials appear to be more satisfied with their conditions at work than the average American, suggesting this is not the whiny and disgruntled generation some have made them out to be. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Steve Leisman.
Mixed results from CBS is where we begin tonight's market focus. The network posting a strong bottom line beat, but revenue missed because of lower ad sales and content licensing fees. The owner of Showtime and other properties blamed the miss in part on non-renewal of sports contracts, among other things. Shares were volatile in initial after-hours trading. During the regular session, the stock was up a fraction to 48.24. Tesla, bigger than expected loss. The electric car maker said it delivered more cars than estimated last month and is predicting it will beat delivery estimates for the fourth quarter overall. Shares popped right after the close. During the regular session, the stock was off 2.5% to 208.35. And a wider than expected loss from Sprint. The wireless carrier posted a 15-cent a share loss, nearly double what was expected. Revenue also below forecast. This comes as promotional price cuts helped the company add subscribers, but weighed on results. Shares down 7% to a fairly light $4.51.
A similar story for Archer Daniels Midland. The corn processor missed on both the top and bottom line. The stronger dollar and a glut in the commodities market weighed on its quarterlies. Shares slid nearly 7% to 43.15. The maker of Polaroid cameras is suing GoPro. Polaroid, which has its own cube-shaped action camera, claims GoPro's Hero 4 session camera infringes on its patent. Shares of GoPro tumbled more than 2% to $25. And despite an earnings miss, the online coupon site Retail Me Not hiked its full-year revenue guidance. This as current quarter revenue beat estimates. Profits did tumble nearly 90%, but investors overlooked that, and shares soared 20% to $10.53.
A troubling report today in the Wall Street Journal. According to their front-page article, the Federal Reserve and Treasury Department temporarily shut off the flow of money to Iraq's central bank out of concerns the funds were ending up in Iran and in the hands of ISIS. Eamon Javers has reported extensively on the money that flows in and out of Iraq, and he joins us now with more. Eamon, where does this money come from?
Tyler, the money originates inside the New York Fed. It's a vault in New Jersey right off of Route 17 there. These are Iraqi funds, though. A lot of people look at this story and they think, oh, it's American dollars going overseas. No, these are Iraqi funds that are denominated in U.S. dollars that are withdrawn by the Iraqi Central Bank from its account at the New York Fed and then driven down I-95 to Andrews Air Force Base and flown over to Baghdad, often on Air Force planes. There, it's distributed to the Central Bank of Iraq, and the concern that American officials had was that they had no visibility into what was happening to these billions of dollars in physical cash, bills shrink-wrapped and lifted on forklifts into the airplane.
Wow.
They didn't know where that money was going once it got to the Iraqi side. Their concerns were that it was somehow making its way to ISIS and then over the border to Iran.
So it doesn't sound like there's any way to actually track the cash, especially after it leaves the U.S.
That's right. And because it's Iraqi government cash, the U.S. government doesn't have all that much ability to see into Iraq to see where the bills are going. But officials tell me that the U.S. does keep track of the serial numbers of the bills that are sent and the date those bills are sent. So if they do circulate to ISIS and a U.S. Special Forces team, for example, were to capture them, they would have a little bit of visibility into where that cash actually came from. But because these circulate inside the Iraqi economy, you don't know just how many stops that bill made between the Central Bank of Iraq and ISIS coffers.
Wow, this is eye-opening. Have the shipments of the cash resumed, and how do we know whether the money is being handled correctly now?
I am told that the shipments of cash have now resumed. These date back all the way to right after the U.S. invasion of Iraq, when the U.S. government decided to unseal the assets of the Saddam Hussein regime and turn those over to the current Iraqi government. They have resumed, and we are told that the Iraqi government has now given the U.S. side some assurances about where this money is all going.
All right, Eamon Javers reporting tonight from Washington.
Coming up, how one drug company managed to grow 600% despite only having one product on the market and a raft of controversy. Here is what to watch for tomorrow. ADP is out with its private employment report, which comes ahead of Friday's big jobs number. Fed Chair Janet Yellen testifies before the House Financial Services Committee about the Fed's plans for bank regulation. And we'll also get the results of a closely watched read on international trade. And that is what to watch for Wednesday.
GlaxoSmithKline unveiling an aggressive expansion plan today. The drug maker could seek regulatory approval for up to 20 new treatments before the year 2020. The CEO explains how reaching this goal would help the firm.
That's clearly the fuel that can drive our pharma business. And as we saw in Q3, as these different divisions are now moving to scale and as the innovation starts to come through to the marketplace, we're getting pretty optimistic about our ability to deliver sustainable sales and earnings growth over the next 5 years.
The move is an effort by Glaxo to rejuvenate its portfolio that's been impacted by falling sales of key drugs.
Painkillers dispensed in the U.S. nearly quadrupled from 1999 to 2010, but Americans report they still have the same amount of pain, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC also says that more than 20,000 people, about 45 a day, died last year from prescription painkiller overdoses. Pretty grim statistics that make the alleged business practices of one publicly traded pharmaceutical company even more disturbing. Dina Gosowski has more in her series Pushing Pain, Profits Before Patients.
The device that I brought with me today allows the patient to simply, with no priming, spray the drug underneath their tongue.
That spray is a highly addictive opiate, 100 times more powerful than morphine, called subsys-fentanyl.
Raise your tongue towards the roof of your mouth.
It can cost between $900 to over $3,000 per package. According to the FDA, Subsys is only meant to be used for persistent cancer pain. But Insys Therapeutics is accused of pushing it far beyond cancer patients, trying to turn the drug into a cash machine.
I ended up resigning on October 2nd of this year.
Former Insys sales representative Shannon Walsh told CNBC that she had to leave the company after she realized
there was just an insatiable greed as far as trying to just get as many prescriptions as possible, titrate these patients up to the highest dose possible.
That alleged strategy seemed to work. Insys stock is now up over 600% since a stratospheric rise from its May 2013 IPO. But exactly how the company achieved that growth is now being investigated in at least 6 states: California, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Arizona, Illinois, and in Oregon, where the state accused Insys of engaging in kickback schemes, having pharmaceutical reps suggest taking doctors out on tequila dates and off-label marketing, all in an effort to boost sales.
I've been investigating drug cases for about 15 years now, and the conduct that we saw in this case is among the most unconscionable that I've seen.
Insys declined an on-camera interview and refused to respond to CNBC's repeated requests for comment. Reports also say that some Insys employees were able to push the painkiller by teaming up with physicians, like Dr. James Galland, who was the top prescriber of Subsys in Oregon. According to this report, he had a long history of running into trouble with medical boards, including having his license suspended in 2014, in part because he misprescribed opiates. CNBC made multiple attempts to contact Dr. Galland, who's still employed at an internal medicine clinic in Oregon, but our calls were not returned. But Insys payments to Dr. Gallant were nothing compared to what the company paid other doctors. Several of them have been arrested and are currently under investigation, revealing exactly how the company used medical professionals to grow profits.
There was harm done to patients on a level that I'm not used to seeing.
Insys settled with Oregon for more than $1 million, almost double how much Subsys it sold in the state. It entered into an assurance of voluntary compliance, agreeing to adhere to regulations set forth by the state, but at the same time not admitting to any wrongdoing. We also need to point out that that stock has a heavy short position, and the company is scheduled to report earnings on Thursday. And Dina joins us now on set. And Dina, it's such an interesting story. This drug is so potent, it actually has a special designation. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Because of the risk of misuse, abuse, and overdose, the FDA says that physicians who prescribe this drug have to be enrolled in a special program, which basically says that the benefits of taking this drug for a patient far outweigh the risks, because again, the chance of addiction for Subsys or any fentanyl products, opiates in general, is just so high.
This story reminds me in a way of Valiant, whose business practices have been called under question, in part targeted by short sellers. How is this case similar and or different?
Right, and Valiant became a story because of that report, versus in this case, everything that was in our story has been backed up by legal documentation. So we know when it comes to Insys, they're being investigated on the state and federal level. Doctors associated with the company are also being investigated. And of course, in their own 10Q filings, Insys reveals that there are at least 6 states that are looking into their business practices.
We look forward to the second installment tomorrow, Dina. Thank you very much. All right.
All right.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. I'm Tyler Matheson. Thanks so much for watching Nightly Business Report.
I'm Sue Herrera. Have a great evening. We'll see you again tomorrow.